I think we are living in a new world. I never had a 13-year-old walk into my clinic with a broken neck, spondylosis, spondylitis.
Is that because of looking at the phone?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the phone, looking at the computer. Same thing with attention deficit hyperactivity, depression, anxiety, sleep issues.
And what's interesting is people think it's what you see that releases dopamine. It's not that. It's the anticipation, right?
Absolutely.
So when I'm on a reel and I'm waiting, okay, what will be next?
Yes.
That's when the dopamine is released.
Correct.
In the realm of minds where knowledge meets grace, Dr. Sweta Adatia shines a beacon in her place. A neurologist of renown, at Gargash she leads, with wisdom from travels and the world's diverse seeds. 8 years in the UAE, before RAC she thrived. Her journey began in Mumbai, where her passion arrived. With fellowships and gold medals, her brilliance unfolds, a tapestry of knowledge woven with stories untold. From Asia to Africa, North America too, her global vision enriches all that she'll do. An MBA from Cambridge, where she made her mark with initiatives for health, igniting a spark. In her limitless brain lab, she maps the profound, using AI to uncover the success that's around. Empowering youth, she shows them the way to embrace their potential come what may. Her book, a bestseller, Future Ready Now, inspiring the world with wisdom she'll endow. A speaker of stature with TEDx in her stride, bridging science and spirit with passion and pride. With millions engaged, her voice starts to soar. In Dubai she resides with a lab that explores. A journey of healing, of knowledge and light, Dr. Adatia, a force, guiding futures so bright. Dr. Sweta, welcome to Second Opinion.
Thank you, Dr. Arif.
You are the first neurologist to come on my show.
Neurologist to neurologist?
Neurologist to neurologist. The only difference is I do only pediatrics and you do adults. So I think it's a good kind of a conflicting but nicely conflicting combination that we're going to have. So let me start off with the elephant in the room, which is your limitless brain lab.
That's right.
Now, your caption there and your main heading there, you say, ancient wisdom meets modern neuroscience. And that was fascinating. I went through some of your videos and the work that you do. And I realized that at one side you talk about energy, meditation, and on the other side you're talking about brain waves and neurofeedback. And how you connect both. That's absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
So tell me a little about that.
Right. Thank you, first of all, for this invitation. And neurologist to neurologist is always an interesting conversation, right? But we'll make it very simple for our audience as well. So it all started with my own journey, So I went, of course, after I became a neurologist, I had a very dear friend of mine. We grew together. She was like my sister, It was like a 25 years old journey with her. Suddenly, one fine day, we are separated. That was a huge emotional trauma to me. And I just could not come out. And I'm like, days and days are going by. I'm ruminating. What is going on? It was like a real emotional torture, let's put it that way. And then serendipitously, I was traveling to US. There was a conference which was happening. And I just walked down there and I say, what are they discussing? They were discussing functional MRI. Functional MRI is a large.
How many years back?
This was about 10 years, roughly 10 years back. So they were discussing this functional MRI for romantic breakups. So I just went into the room and I said, well, I don't have a romantic breakup, but definitely a breakup, which is like, friendship or parenting, everything. You really feel that pain. So I walked down to the professor and I said that, I'm sorry, but can you do my functional MRI? And he says, yeah, but what is the need? I said, this is what I've gone through. So I undergo a functional MRI.
In the US?
In the US, yes. And what is it showing? Very interesting. And I myself, was shocked to see that data. There was a lighting up of a particular area in the brain called ventral tegmental area. And as I was discussing with the professor, he says, Doc, this area is responsible for addiction, particularly the heroin addicts have this area lighted up. I said, oh my God, I've never been an addict of any kind, which means, that attachment, that deep emotional, I would say the attachment which I had was actually the reason of this. Then I understood the game. I said, I have to get this off. I really need to work on myself. I need to take a step back, understand the brain from a very different perspective. And then back home, I had the EEG scans. We don't have functional MRI. And
so at that point, did you pivot, or you carried on your clinical work and then you added this to it?
Absolutely. I carried on my clinical work, and I wanted to change my brain, right? I was going through that emotional pain, and I wanted to come out of it. So what I did was I came back to Dubai and started to do my own EEG.
This was 2000?
This was about 2012. 12, 13. And then I started to do my Q analysis, or quantitative EEG, and I wanted to really focus on that limbic system, or the emotional regulatory system. And then I thought, oh, I'm not able to do it myself. I tried everything. I read about it, and I said, now I need some help. And then again, the things came in that where do I take the help from? People started to say meditation, breathing techniques. I was very new to all of this. Somebody talked about chakras, which also I was not very aware about, energy sciences. So one by one, I started to take healers' helps. That is where the entire thing started. Now, in the process, I also learned that there is something called the peak performer's brain. When I read across that article and then went through the literature, I said, I also want to have a peak performer's brain. What was in that peak performer's brain is that the prefrontal cortex, the front portions of the brain, both are active. The emotional cortex, or the default mode network, is slightly partially deactivated. There's no rumination happening. The person is in the present. There's a lot of theta waves which are there. There is symmetry of all the waves which are happening. Theta is not in the front side. Theta always is at the central and posterior region. Alpha is in the right location. So when I looked at that, I said, I want to have that. But how do you again have that? So that's where my journey of also mapping the peak performer started. Okay. In fact, I had some amazing people mapped in the lab. One of them was Nicole, who stood on Burj Khalifa. Do you remember that Emirates?
Yes,
yeah.
Well.
So, when we were chatting, I just met her at a conference and I said, Nicole, this is amazing. But the story she told me was even more amazing. She said, Doc, I had 7 accidents, 7 fractures in an accident, and I thought, my life is gone. And from then on, the resilience kicked in. I wanted to do this stunt, and I'm like, wow, where is that resilience? So I said, let's study your brain one by one. And her husband is a parachute diver, he's one of those top parachute divers. So I said, why don't you bring him in as well? So this is how the journey continued.
Dr. Sweta, you keep saying in your videos that you are a plumber of the brain. And you, of course, fix the brain because you're a neurologist, but you also kindle a normal brain.
That's right.
Why do you say that?
So this is exactly the peak performer story, right? We are all born with this limitless potential. The idea behind keeping the name as Limitless Brain was that I think we underestimate our possible potentials. You are such an example. We were just talking off studio that you started in 2015 when there was no pediatric neurologist in Dubai. So, we are the type of the people who want to push the boundaries. We want to get everything what is there in the brain right. So that is where the limitless and the kindling started to come from.
Sorry, I was watching this movie, I think a few years ago. I'm sure you've seen that, Limitless.
Yes, the pill that you pop on.
The pill that you take. And they say that you normally use less than 5% or 10% of your brain, and the rest is still open to use. Is that true?
Well, it's not true. It's a myth. We know that, right? It's a myth. But the point is, how many of us spend the time in just either, which is your limbic system? So let's, for the sake of the audience, we just say that there are 3 brains that we talk about. There's a brain stem, which is about breathing, which is about the survival.
The involuntary.
Yes, the involuntary functions. And then there is this limbic system, which is more about emotions, care, love, and also fighting the threats. So all the fight, flight, fear, and the freeze comes from the limbic system. And then there is this prefrontal cortex bilaterally, which is very, very important for intuition, judgment, morality, understanding what is good and bad, knowing what should be the future steps, taking a step back and knowing where your life is going, etc. So understanding how the orchestration of this brain is, and then sort of taking it into control. We live in a world, I feel there is a lot of opportunities and a lot of distractions. They are both hand in hand. People who will be able to tame their distractions would be the one who will be able to grasp that opportunity and grow.
I think our smartphones.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest distraction.
Ticking bombs. I call them as ticking bombs.
I call them electronic nannies.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, totally.
So you amalgamate concepts like pranayama, meditation, and alternative healing.
That's right.
Let's take one at a time. So what is pranayama?
So prana means vital force. It's a Sanskrit word called pranayam.
But pran means life also, no?
Yes, life and vital force. So it's like taking control of the life force. So it's not just any breath work or breathing. It is indeed, it's a fairly deep science, but my exposure is also to the point that I wanted to fix myself. So I had zero idea about what the right nostril is all about and the left nostril. I mean, it all starts with why do we have two nostrils, two sides of the brain, etc. So it's essentially the study of this breath flow and then comes back to autonomic nervous system. So there is a sympathetic system, which is fight, flight, fear, freeze, and then there is parasympathetic, which is our baseline tone or the vagus nerve. So it's all about the balance of that. And essentially, when you watch breathing from, and we are doctors, right? Our first thing is to understand how the patient is breathing or how the patient is, the blood pressure, etc., the vitals.
So meditation comes in that discussion when you talked about. Then how do you connect that to the alternative healing? What's that concept?
So many years back, I went and read this book, Many Lives, Many Masters.
I haven't.
Dr. Brian Weiss, And when I was reading about it, there was a story of a girl called Catherine in the book. And that Catherine's story was she had severe phobia. She had the phobia of fire. And there was nobody who was able to help her. And this psychiatrist, Dr. Brian Weiss, does some form of a hypnosis and figures out that she had in her past life, and I mean, I don't even understand this life. Where is the question of past life, right? And then she was some German soldier and there was a fire on the deck and that is why she has a phobia. So it was very inquisitive and curious for me. I said, what is this going on? So I took literally a flight to New York. I used to stay in Canada in Calgary. So I visit and do his workshop. And I was one of those critical neurologists saying, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I would say that now even.
And I was just watching. I did a 21 days of the workshop with him and I was wondering what is the hell is going on, and that is when I understood that there's lots beyond what you and me understand in the allopathic medicine. And then, when I came back again, as I was dealing with this emotional trauma, a friend of mine walks in and says, let's fix your chakras. I said, where are the chakras, So these spinning wheels which are there, and that's when I told them, I said, okay, but how do you measure it,
So this comes under that part which is like, you don't know what you don't know, isn't it?
That's right.
The last segment.
Absolutely.
It exists, but you don't even know that it exists.
Absolutely. In fact, for meditation, there was a fantastic story behind it. So I was very young when I met my spiritual teacher. She lives in India and I was 16 and, I just walked, just literally I was...
At 16 you started
At 16 meditating. I just told my parents that who am I, where am I going? And they're like, we don't know. And that's when the spiritual teacher walks into my life. She's an amazing person. She lives in India. And then we were traveling and we went to one of the centers in Pune in India. It's called CHEFR, Center for High Energy and Frequency Sciences. So I walk in there and they were doing a Kirlian photography. And again, this was many, many years back. And I said, what is this Kirlian photography? They said, why don't you try to have a photograph? So they just literally put you in a little photo booth and then there's a white light which passes and then a colored picture which comes in. So when I looked at that, the doctor sat with me, they were alternative healers and said, I don't think so you meditate. I said, how do you know that? There's a lot of white spaces around you. And they started to talk about this aura. So aura was the first time when I heard what is that aura. But when I looked at that, there was kind of something inside me saying that I need to learn it. I need to fix this. I really don't need those white spaces. That is when my real meditation so-called journey also started. And then I was quite interested that, now imagine alpha is the main wave when I close my eyes. How many times
we close our eyes?
How many times we close our eyes in the entire day, even if we ask our audience?
Probably never, except for blinking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And you need some time with your eyes closed to build that alpha. So very quickly, I was able to take it to the lab and all the experiments were with me. So I was the only guinea pig then,
So you were the scientist and you were the guinea pig as well.
Because I had to fix myself as well.
So what was the inspiration behind Limitless Brain Labs? Now it's available online.
That's
People
right.
can take courses on
That's
that.
Right.
What was the inspiration for that?
So when I understood from these peak performers, so we did a clustering of so many of these people, so we had athletes, then we had peak performers from the leaderships, yes, we had CEOs, we had the brains of meditators. In fact, I had some of the fantastic brains of the people who had meditated for 40,000 hours, So when we studied all those clusters, very quickly that...
Studied, you mean through...
through the quantitative EEG, through the questionnaires, we went and did some lifestyle assessment for them. We did their autonomic nervous system examination. We also did their chakra analysis. We did pretty much all the hula that was available to us, then and now both. And slowly we started to add those things so that we can have more multi-parametric study and examination. So when we clustered these people, that's when I understood sort of the formula that there's a way in which you can structure and develop your brain from wherever you are. Now, you may have a broken brain. When we say, why do we say a broken brain? It may not be physically or structurally broken. There can be functional discontinuities. Your mood is low, depression, autism, autistic spectrum. I don't believe in labels, but what I believe in is that if there is a thing to be fixed, we should work upon it by knowing that. What you can measure, you can manage.
So what kind of people come from Dubai, for example?
Yes.
I mean, you are based in Dubai, you have your clinical practice here.
That's right.
What kind of patients come to you and say, look, I want to be a part of this Limitless Brain Lab?
So both kinds of people. One is the people who say, oh, let's figure out what is going on in my head, I don't know. Sometimes people overestimate or underestimate what is their potentials or their performances. So there's one set of people who say, see my brain so that,
as a novelty.
As a novelty, absolutely. I just want to understand.
Like people doing genetic tests for no apparent reason.
That's
just
right.
Want to know.
I mean, and you want to just understand the peak performance, right? And the second set of people is the ones who are suffering with depression, anxiety, because then you want to also quantitatively measure that, monitor it, have a perfect plan going forwards. And
so if they are also seeing a psychiatrist, for example, and they're under depression or whatever, this information and data that you generate from your QEEGs and so forth, would that help a psychiatrist to?
Absolutely, for monitoring. See, diagnosis we all know is super easy, right? Depression is very easy to understand, anxiety is very easy to understand, but from the biomarkers perspective, and then later on I strongly feel that this is all the data that goes on into individualization and personalization of care, right? How from the pharmacogenomics we know that if I take Cipralex is very different from what you take antidepressant like Cipralex. So how do we then get all these biomarkers studied? That is sort of my vision and purpose as well.
So your clients for this particular program or the course that you have are from Dubai, from India.
That's right.
Where else? Which other countries?
US, Canada, Australia. We have pretty much a global audience, let's put it that way.
So when you look at the peak performance brain as opposed to a non-peak performance brain, quantitatively, what is the difference?
So there are three major points which we have found, and that is what we need to chase also, because then finally, you don't just look at it and say, hey, this is it, right? You need to do something about it. The first thing what we saw was the symmetry of the alpha, which was very well present, because the moment you have alpha asymmetry in the frontal lobes, you either tend to have emotional dysregulation, low mood, performance issues, judgment issues, morality issues, many things can come in. That was number one. Number two was the proportion of the brain waves which has to be present in the right location. For example, the beta you don't want at the back. Beta you want in the front, because that is where concentration, focus, attention comes in. When you close your eyes, you don't want alpha in the front. You want alpha at the back, posteriorly. You want theta right in the centrally. So each of those ones had the right location and the power was high. So we don't generally in a normal EEG see the power. So here you sort of constrict them, you amplify them, and then study the amplitude. The amplitude of theta is what we found to be higher than the general population. That was our second finding.
Then how do you work on it? So for example, you find out that my beta is in the back, for example, and now you think that is the reason why I'm... How do you work on it?
So there's neuromodulation, right? So there are many modalities in neuromodulation. One of the modalities is these ancient techniques that we talked about.
The meditation.
The meditation, yes. The meditation,
to relax your mind.
Hypnosis. Also, there are multiple other therapies where you work on your subconscious as well. Then comes the modern neuromodulation. So there's light photomodulation, there's neurofeedback. So you're watching into a television or you're watching into an app, which sort of gives you a feedback on how your brain is functioning, and then you sort of change. That is the second one.
Like TMS comes into this as
That's right, absolutely. TMS comes into it. Somebody was talking to me day before about the movie Lucas. I haven't seen that.
Cerebral palsy child.
Yeah, the CP child. What is going on?
They came to Bangalore to get a treatment which changed the child's life. I mean, it's an anecdote, of course.
Absolutely.
But it's an interesting movie because I think the journey was what I loved about it. Not so much the final outcome, but the journey these parents had to go through and how determined they were to get help for their child.
And this is what I have seen that, and since you deal with people with CP and people with ADHD, ADD and all, they really, these are the people who can do anything to just get their children fixed.
But the negative side of that is they will go to any extent to help their child.
Which is true.
Some people take advantage of that.
That's true.
And that's the bugbear that
Absolutely.
I have.
I agree to that. I agree to that. And
Yeah.
but what's your experience about ADHD? People say that ADHD is on the rise, and you know, I think Instagram is making it easier. You just swipe and say, "Hey, do you have ADHD?" And then
it's all dopamine, right?
Yeah,
you have opportunities for dopamine to be released even more now than you had 20 years back.
Absolutely.
So one scroll, one dopamine shot. One scroll, one dopamine. Why won't you keep taking it?
Yeah.
Simple. It's like a drug, basically. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
What about kids? Now, many of your subscribers or the people who take your courses are adults. What about kids?
So in kids, what we did was we had to go through two processes, and there's another side of all this also. So many years back, again, this is an old story, there are two kinds of marriages in India, love marriage and arranged marriage. There are two kinds of careers, love career and arranged career. Right. And mine was 100% an arranged one.
Okay.
My parents were into medical field, and then I got a lot of marks, 95%.
What do you do with
these marks? Okay, go try medicine. With the pretext of trying medicine, I entered the medical field, and then how long it takes, 5 years of MBBS, 1 year of internship, 1 year of pre-medicine, 3 years of medicine, 1 year of pre-neurology, 3 years of
Mine was even longer, but anyways.
Yeah, and then stroke, and then after that also, after 15 years, am I wondering, am I in the right place? Am I out of place? Should I do medicine? Should I continue doing this? So that is where I started to study psychometrics. So there were a lot of psychometric tools which were available, and literally I remember I was in Canada, minus 60-degree outside, really cold, and I complete my fellowship, and then I'm sitting with it saying, okay, let me spend all these dollars understanding who I am, and let's spend all the dollars into this psychometric test. I mean, those were the times when MBTI and all was not heard of, 10, 15 years back roughly. So when I looked at all those psychometric, I got hold of one tool which really changed sort of the way I was thinking about what my potentials were, and that was called Neatling Brain Inventory. So I called up Dr. Neatling's office. At that time, he used to be in Philadelphia, now he's in South Africa. I was not getting the appointment, and then I kept on pestering it. 6 months later, I get the appointment and I get an opportunity to study that tool. Now, when I studied that tool, very interesting things came out that, the brain as such, and I mean, left and right side is quite a pop neuroscience, as you know. It's not really about the left and right. It's a metaphorical model of understanding how you're thinking. And when I understood that, I spoke to Dr. Neatling that I am interested to make this tool into something which we can use for our current kids, from 12 years to 18 years. How can we help them choose their careers, choose their subjects? I mean, they don't have a frontal lobe at the age of 16. Yes, and understanding where do they go, careers, subjects. I mean, at 16, I don't even know if I want a burger or a pizza, and I'm talking about a choice of a career. So that is when we started working on this particular tool, and the last book, Future Ready Now, which is available on Amazon, talks about this. So we took this tool and then converted into a digital sort of an available tool so that it becomes scalable.
What is it called now?
It's called My Brain Design. The tool is called My Brain Design, and then the entire program is still My Limitless Brain.
Okay.
So this started to get utilized for these kids.
What is the outcome of that?
Precisely. So outcome I need at different ages, different ones, right? From 12 to 14, what am I looking at? My academic performance, my studying style, my learning style, my family dynamics.
But sorry, I'm keeping you, keep interrupting you, just to fill up the gaps with the audience.
Sure.
They might have same questions in their head. Yes. So a psychologist or an educational psychologist goes through the same psychometric analysis to come up with the same outcomes.
That's right.
How is this different?
So the psychometric analysis, which is unfortunately used in the educational psychology, is only talking about aptitudes. It is only talking about verbal and English, and we are still sort of not beyond that, because nowadays I think with the new ChatGPT and Google's access and all that, we don't really need to understand the aptitude. What we really need to understand is the thinking preferences. So this is where the tool differs, and that's why it is not classified as a psychometric. These are the tools which comes under neurodevelopmental. There's a one big neurodevelopmental tool used in corporate, which is very popular in US. It's called Herman Brain Dominance Inventory. So when I was studying this for me,
before employment, what kind of person you are?
Yes, precisely, and team onboarding, and then forming sort of and in fact 90% of Fortune 500 companies are using it. It's a very powerful tool to build a customer product, understand how the customer thinks and all. So when we studied this, and particularly for me, it all again stems back to my own choices and all this. I thought, I think I'm a very creative person, and of course, essentially a very data-centric person. So alone, medicine is not just for me.
You have to do something else.
Yes, that's when I started also to learn that I want to do an MBA, and eventually landed up doing MBA from Cambridge with a good scholarship.
I'm going to talk to you about screen time in kids, because I myself deliver a lot of talks to schools and on conferences talking about screen time. and how screen has changed social relationships, and that we can see on our daily
100%.
daily routine life.
And COVID made it worse.
Worse, of course.
Yeah.
And people, during COVID, it helped a lot, of course. But now it's come to a point where it's causing more harm than good,
Absolutely.
I believe. So what's your take on this? And do you have a solution for this modern pandemic that has come
Absolutely.
in now?
Thank you for saying that. It's literally a modern pandemic, you know, and as we are, I mean, can we get rid of the screens? Let's ask that question
not.
first.
Of course not.
That's out of question, right? Technology is going to be a part of us. Technology was a part of us before and is a part of us now, and it will be the part of us even going forwards. Now, screens cannot be eliminated, but what can be done is, let me talk to you about a story, okay? I think that will deliver this message even more robust. So there was this young guy who came to Dubai, and very first time in Dubai, and after a while, it was from a very, very small village from India, and he got his Ferrari rented, so he was quite excited to drive that Ferrari. And
so he's from a small village in India. He came and rented a Ferrari.
Rented a Ferrari. He was living in Dubai for a couple of years, and that is always the charm, right? The Dubai which provides. And so this uncle of his visits him now, and he's like, okay, I'm going to make you sit in the best of the cars, and we're going to drive the Sheikh Zayed road, and then the boy is driving across at the Sheikh Zayed, beautiful buildings come in, and very excited to show the entire, you know, sort of the Dubai skyline to the uncle. Uncle is sitting there enjoying the view, and 5 minutes later, the car crashes against a pole. And then the uncle is not perturbed. The boy is like very perturbed and says, "Oh my God, you know,
it's a
that damage is a And then the uncle is still calm and quiet, and he asked the uncle, "Why are you not perturbed?" He said, "Yes, you called me. I enjoyed the ride. I sat in this fancy thing. We went across Sheikh Zayed Road, everything. I was wondering, how will it stop?" And now I know this is how it stops. So the question comes is, where is the brake? Is the brake inside or is the brake outside? This is the problem. You know, we will never be able to eliminate the screens, but are we putting a brake? Is there an internal mechanism saying, hey, I need to protect my eyes as well. I need to protect my brain as well. And screens, as we know, causes the idling rhythm. When I look at a TV, you know, in the good old days, it used to be called an idiot box because there is this fixed idling rhythm that is generated. Now, the modern day screens, they say if you're not learning from the screen, there's no interaction which is happening. You're just consuming. You're putting the dopamine, as you said, and also you're generating this idling rhythm. So somewhere we need to have this balance. The question comes is, you know, for a parent, it has to be to the children saying that this is it, this is the break, right? We cannot use more than X hours. The latest data is even more startling. The adult consumption of US, and this is a very latest data, averages to 17 hours.
I thought it was 11.5.
Exactly. I thought precisely the last report that I read was around 11.5 to 12 hours.
That's all the awake period. I mean, they sleep for 8 hours.
Yes, precisely. Insane, right? So somewhere I think we will have to have the balance. We will need to use the technology appropriately for our younger generations as well.
And what's interesting is people think it's what you see that releases dopamine. It's not that. It's the anticipation, right?
Absolutely.
So when I'm on a reel and I'm waiting, okay, what will be next? That's when the dopamine is released.
Correct.
When I change and see that video, dopamine is not released then.
Correct.
Then it finishes, okay, now I'm waiting for the next one. That's when the dopamine releases.
Correct. It's like one of those Las Vegas casinos,
exactly.
right? Just before you put a slot machine on, that anticipation is...
And when you talk about TVs in olden days, when we used to watch TVs, you don't have that many options. Your one program is finished, you're done.
Done, finish.
Or the next program you don't like, you'll switch it off. Now you have these options, change the platform, go from Twitter to Instagram to LinkedIn to, you know.
Absolutely. And where is the end? When you're scrolling that, there is no end. So it's like an external break versus the internal break.
My father still subscribes to a newspaper every morning.
Me too.
And he reads the whole newspaper.
Wow.
And there's an end to it, but he spends 3 hours doing it. But he says, look, now it's come to an end. I don't have any other option. I'll have to wait for the next day or the new newspaper to come.
Which is very good because I still do it because that's the multi-sensory stimulation that we talk about, right? You touch, you feel, you have a look at the smell. Everything matters. I think from the point of view of the brain, it's as much of a sensory stimulation.
I read some terms in your on your website when I was doing the research about your work, and you talk about neuroparenting.
That's right.
And also a concept called apple brain.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit.
Apple, you know, people are all fascinated with apples nowadays. And very interesting, there's a neuroscience twist to this apple as well. Why do you think people buy Apple phones? Or what is the logic and rationale?
It's a status symbol in many countries, not so much in Dubai now, but in many countries it is. And two, because of the ease of use.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think
the
this
quality.
is Apple's strategy in quality, and it's Apple's strategy to make it simple for people to use it and hook them onto it.
Absolutely. And there's another neuroscience fundamental to that. And I read this in many, many years back in one of the journals, where Nature or somewhere, I don't recollect the name of the journal, but it was very fascinating for me. The way they have built their case, there is a unique thing that they have put where the touch is 1 to 4 per second, which is mimicking an empathetic human touch, which was very surprising for me, right? But
the feel of the phone.
The feel of the phone. The feel of the phone is very unique, and that's why you don't want to let it out. Once an Apple user will forever be the Apple user. However, but as you rightly mentioned, there's quality, there's status, everything is just picture perfect.
And they're always different, so and they're not compatible.
That's right. They're not ecosystem. You need an ecosystem.
So once you're 3 or 4 years with Apple, they make sure that when you go on to something else, an Android, you will not find it easy.
Yes.
So you will come back to Apple.
Absolutely. So that is what you need, an Apple brain as well, right? You need a brain which is...
What's neuroparenting?
Yeah, so neuroparenting is about giving all these fundamental concepts about how does a child grow. Now, for example, 0 to 3 years, I mean, you will understand it better than what I can explain. 700 connections per second of neuronal synapses are happening, right? The synapse is like a connection. So with that astronomical speed of growth of the brain, with the critical periods in the child's growth, so there is some form of an understanding which we can do as brain-based parenting. So essentially, neuroparenting is all about making them understand these concepts. A lot of people between 0 and 3, they come and say that, but we have to go for a job. And then I said, no, then the nanny is raising your kid. You are not raising the kid. So then you're not giving that environment.
You talk about reversing brain aging.
That's right.
How?
So many years back, again, this was a thought for us, all of us. Would we be living longer? And that thought is now a reality, right? The longevity is kicking up. There's lots of things which are done. I think there was a big debate about Brian Johnson leaving that podcast. I don't know if you saw, because of the air quality.
Air quality in Bombay.
Air quality in Mumbai, etc. So now longevity is sort of kicking up big time. Lots of things are happening. And I get reminded of this case, a few days back, I had this huge macho guy in my clinic, and then he was taking a lot of supplements and just picture perfect body that you can imagine. He was a physical fitness trainer, has some 100 people working under his company, and comes and says, I have just lost it. I cannot think. I have brain fog. I don't know what's going on. My working memory is screwed up. I'm extremely anxious. I cannot go to sleep. And this is the time when you stop and you say that, wow, you can have a wonderful body. You can lift 100 kgs of the weight. But if this goes off, what do you do, So I think when people are talking of longevity, very few people talk of the brain longevity. Doing nothing, you and me doing nothing, in the 10 years, we are going to lose 5% of our brain. That is sort of the general atrophy which is anticipated. And the atrophy also unfortunately begins in the frontal lobe, which is the last to be myelinated, but the first to sort of lose the neurons as well. If we do not work on the brain aging, I think we will soon be in the pandemic of dementia. 1700% rise is any which way is anticipated for Alzheimer's.
What people think, that there was a recent debate about the number of hours we work, and Narayan Murthy, the Infosys guys still work 70 hours a week.
Yes.
And many people were against it. They said, no, there should be rest and all that. Absolutely. But my take is this on this. I believe that even the brain cannot differentiate, right?
Yes.
When you're working and when you're not working.
Absolutely.
So if I'm using a phone and sitting at home, I'm actually working.
Correct. I agree.
Because it's a level of stress, level of dopamine you're releasing.
Absolutely.
It doesn't change. I go home, I have a fight with my wife. It's worse than working. And the stress that you're having. So although you're working 8 hours, actually you end up working 17 hours a day.
Absolutely.
So differentiating work and non-work. If I'm enjoying my work, it's not work.
It's not work. It's a flow state, right?
It's a flow state, yeah.
Precisely.
So if I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing now, I might do it for 12 hours in a day and still have my mental stability.
Absolutely.
So that's where people should know that difference. If you enjoy your work and don't want to rush home because you want to get away from it, that means you're actually not working.
Absolutely.
And that's why people like Narayan Murthy can manage and live to 80s and 90s.
Because their work is their inspiration, right? You're not stressing your brain. See, again, when do you stress your brain? When you have to get a lot of beta. So I always say that, if you're beta fired, then obviously burnout is your only destination. If you're working in alpha, you're always relaxed, calm. For example, for me now, I cannot think of working beyond kidney or heart or anything. No, it's all about brain, right? When you are in that flow state, it really does not matter whether you recover or you take rest. But there's going to be a very interesting survey which we did because of the book, The World Economic Forum has also been talking talking about it. Going forwards, let's say the generation now they say the next generation is going to be the
Alpha.
beta.
Yeah, beta.
After Alpha is the next beta.
Mm.
When the beta generation is going to come out there are going to be portfolio careers, which means, one person will land up, I mean, you and me are already doing that,
yes.
but there will be multiple careers which will be done by a single person because AI will be facilitatory.
Yes.
So many mundane tasks will be taken by AI. So it's going to be a very different world, an interesting world which is going to be out there.
Because many people, when I deliver talks on autism, they ask, why is autism increasing?
Yeah.
So 1 in 36, for example,
Yes.
now. And I don't have any evidence for this, but I believe it's a form of evolution where the nature wants kids to be focused on one particular area. You see, most of the children with autism are very good digitally.
Yes.
Invariably, all of them,
Very true.
on a YouTube channel, they will be so easily
Super
manipulating.
geeky, yes.
And that's how the brain is wired for now. And that's what nature wants to do.
True.
So what's the aim is, for example, in 50 years' time, we might have 1 in 10 or 1 in 5.
Wow.
So out of 5 of us sitting in the studio, 1 of us will have autism, but we'll be functional autism.
Yes.
They want that particular individual to focus on one particular task really well and not be the jack of many trades.
Amazing. Oh, interesting.
And if that were to happen, and say, I won't be here 50 years down the line, but then we will have, say, 1 in 10, 1 in 5 kids with autism. They will not be neurodiverse anymore.
That's right. That whole entire concept will be a flaw then, because that's a common norm.
Exactly. So people who are like neurotypical now probably will end up being neurodiverse.
Yes, I agree. No,
So
absolutely.
it's very interesting and fascinating concept.
Very fascinating because nobody thinks from the perspective of the evolution because now the world and this is catching up at a very fast pace. So where does the brain catch on?
Exactly.
But very interesting thing which I read, and I don't know, Dr. Arif, what is your take on it? What was the reason why the brain was so evolved? I mean, we know the process of evolution, right?
Yeah.
We were all not walking straight. We really were not humans. There was all the mammals which came prior to us. But what was the reason why we needed a brain?
Why we needed a brain in the first place?
Yes, in the first place.
I mean, brain, even before us, many species had brain.
Correct.
We were not the first species to have brain.
Correct.
Why it evolved? Probably nature wanted to create one species that can dominate in one way or the other. And the brain is still evolving, by the way.
It's still evolving.
It has not stopped.
It's not stopped.
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of millions of years.
Precisely.
So we will not be, watching what happens 500 years down the line.
Right.
But the evolution process hasn't stopped.
Correct.
And that's why autism is a part of that, I think.
Precisely.
How our brains are wired.
So what they say that the real reason why the brain initially was because we wanted to be a locomotive. We had to move. So the first thing was cerebellum kicked in because cerebellum is the balance thing and let's make them move. There was nothing about frontal cortex and talking about the lower brain.
Yes.
So that was how in the entire journey this took over. So it's very fascinating. The evolution really is something.
Not just one. There are multiple hypotheses and concepts for this, and each one of them are very interesting read.
Amazing.
Actually, what are the misconceptions that adults who come to you in a neurology clinic have about brain health? Tell me a few.
Now, if I talk to you and say, when did you get your blood count assessed? You will say, 3 months back. You got your thyroid check, you got your kidney check. When did you get your brain and mental health checked?
How do you do that?
That's right. So that is the fundamental thing. So most people consider this as granted, that I don't need to check my brain. I'm going to my job and things are happening, and it's not like that. We really need to become serious about what is my sleep like, what is my memory, short-term memory like, what is my long-term memory like, and that is also one of the reasons why Limitless Brain is doing what it is doing. Because we really need to have a method in which we can give a mental health and a brain health assessment, and which is what is the biggest misconception that people have, that it's all going hunky-dory and everything is fine.
Take it for granted, right? They have a brain, it's working.
Absolutely.
It's when you hit that age, you realize, okay, I'm starting to lose some part of it. I can't focus anymore. My memory is kind of deteriorating, which is, dementia is something that we say only some people have, but actually all of us have it.
Precisely. Name, now, for example, after a certain while, you forget the names.
I'll give you an example. In 80s, for example, I used to remember about 160 phone numbers.
Wow.
160 phone numbers.
Amazing.
As a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old.
Wow.
Today, I don't know my wife's phone number. I have to look it up on my phone.
And that is the Google effect. That's what they call,
exactly.
right?
It's because the part of the brain that you don't use, then nature decides that you don't need it.
Yeah.
And then it stops.
Absolutely.
Same thing with satellite navigation. 100 times I go to work, but even today when I go, I'm thinking, okay, I will switch on my sat nav. Let me just put it on in case.
Precisely.
And that's when you don't use your brain in that area.
Use it or lose it,
yes.
right?
Let's talk about dopamine. I mean, we just briefly touched on that. And We talked about how dopamine is released when you doom scroll. When you scroll the same thing is with eating, right?
Oh, yes.
And the same thing is with gambling as such.
The same concept, the same fundamental phenomenon.
How do you get that? Is there a way you can get control over that dopamine release?
So this dopamine has always been a frenzy, right? It's something which is a reward mechanism. It's something which then may kick in serotonin also, which may make you happy and all that. But the point is, there has to be a limit to everything. The moment you exhaust it completely, then you go into dopamine and then a super crash. Dopamine and then a super crash. So dopamine is really not, it's not something which we need to blame, or dopamine is great, right? You need it. But this rapid crashes are something which we need to avoid. Same thing exactly for the food, right? I started to do intermittent fasting for last couple of months, and it's been a game changer for me. My memory is much sharper, I can think better. I was struggling otherwise for a lot of tasks and all. So why is that? Because now you're allowing your system to sort of recover, to rest. And
your
then
gut
your gut specifically, right? The same thing with the brain, right? Now you dopamine, you can't just keep on pushing it and then have a rapid crash. So I think the crash is something which we need to really focus on.
Many say, we know that the gut is the second brain.
That's right.
It? Can you tell the audience why that is?
Absolutely. So gut, 90% of the serotonin is presumably formed in the gut, and not just the gut, it's a lot of bacteria which live around in the gut, the microbiota. And the interesting thing is I got my gut assessment done, and we got it for 25 other people because we were doing a study on understanding what is the relationship of microbiota to the QEEGs of the brain. There is something called the diversity, which means how many microbiomes that you have in your gut, right? And there's a score which was in this particular report from 0 to 8. Mine was only 0.5. It was very shocking.
So larger the better?
The larger the better, because 7 and 8, and then one of my colleagues was 6, and I'm like, how do you do that, And then she says, yeah, but I eat 80 different foods in a week. I said, oh my God, and how do you do that? So I come back home and I told my maid that now we have to change the entire thing. And then she's like, 100 items, how do I make it happen? But it's doable now that we converted into a formula called 33 salads. There has to be 33 items. This is exactly
like what happens to, for example, when the results come out in school and I get low marks or I fail. I'm very sad. But the moment I know my friend has passed, that makes it even worse. That's
absolutely. Like, no, I need to get there. And thankfully, in that process, you start to understand what your gut is, how important is your gut, And then a lot of people are gluten sensitive nowadays. I see a lot of people with a lot of allergies, lactose intolerances, and all this. There is a gut-brain axis. So there is a direct influence. Food and mood, they say, are related. Why is that? Because your microbiome is producing these chemicals which are sort of having a bi-directional pathway with the brain.
As we're talking about the gut, let me ask you this question on nutrition. How does nutrition play a role in brain health?
See, there is a very, again, an interesting survey which we had done. We just asked the people randomly that, are you supplementing enough brain health supplements in your regular diet? So the question then comes is, what are the supplements which you need for the brain? So if we go really microscopically, so the brain is formed of brain cells, and if we look at that, so I like to call it as a cognitive currency. So how much of a currency the bank has, that is how much of the time you will be free from dementia and everything. So in that unit of currency, what are the things that cell needs? There's a cell cover, there is protoplasm, there are a lot of things, every part of the cell, your mitochondria, your functioning of each of the things needs your vitamin B12, needs your omega-3. Now, gluten, yes, lutein, the
folic acid,
a lot of people are not even aware about lutein, as you rightly just mentioned. So are you taking all of this in your diet? That is what if we ask the question, then most people don't. And that is where nutrition comes to play. Now, if I were to take, let's say, an X amount of this particular thing, I might have to have 10 odd carrots or 10 odd, the whole bowls of spinach,
which is not
practical. And that is the reason why supplement does play an important role. I'm a strict vegetarian and I have been taking...
So is that a part of your program as well? The one you have, Limitless Brain?
Yes, absolutely. So there is individualization and personalization of the supplement which comes in. Basically, when you do your assessment, you understand, okay, I'm super beta and that is why my brain is sort of stressed. So I need some antioxidants. So there's a formula.
So do you work with dietitians on this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Yes, and there is also a very interesting study which was released. It's called Cosmos. There were 3 parts to this study, and there was a particular element which was studied called centrum. So how that was effective to protect the brain health. They had about 3 years of an added benefit which was there when people were taking over the age of 50.
Right.
So these are, I mean, I have not had a single positive trial until now when I was going through the entire literature, except the one which was this Cosmos Mind.
I think I have to read this.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, now it's been 4-5 years, has there been a generalized change in brain and mental health?
Super change. I think we are living in a new world, let's put it that way, and I'm sure that would be your experience as well. I never had a 13-year-old walk into my clinic with a broken neck. Spondylosis, spondylitis.
Is that because of looking at the phone?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the phone, looking at the computers. I mean, 13-year-old with a cervical spondylosis, I never had a diagnosis.
I have
15
children
years
with
back.
delayed speech coming in significantly higher than what it was
prior. And same thing with ADD, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with attention deficit hyperactivity, depression, anxiety, sleep issues. Insomnia has been such an important thing. And then you keep asking why, because 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
So it's not the COVID, it's actually the addiction to screen that's
precisely. Because that is the time when, you know, a lot of people got a change in their work shifts, a lot of things became hybrid, a lot of things became work from home, and this was not something which was part of our evolution. So there's a number called Dunbar number, very interesting number. So Dunbar was a D-U-N-B-A-R. So he was a social anthropologist. And what he saw in chimpanzees was that for the brain to be cognitively developed, you need to interact. And he gave a number of 5 socially. And that has to be physical. It cannot be virtual. So what he learned was and in fact, Facebooks and a couple of companies very interestingly use until now Dunbar's philosophy. So what they say is that 150 is my outer circle of contacts. Acquaintances, which outer, you know, it's not very close, but I can reach out to, I can connect to. And when the certain company reaches 150, they sort of change the building. So they still go by the Dunbar's philosophy that, you know, you can cognitively influence, but the first 5, what you stay around is extremely important.
Your family, right?
We lost that. We literally lost that.
I love that picture where there is a family of 5 or 6 sitting around a table, all on the phone. From the father, the child, everybody. That's a scary picture for me.
That's the real picture, unfortunately.
And they're texting each other.
Absolutely. And then,
so it's not far off when we lose our ability to speak as well, I think, because you have to just digitally pass the information. Why do I need to speak to you?
Precisely. No, absolutely. And then the connection to nature was lost, right? You never go out. I mean, children, what I understand is, and you are the best person for that, how do they develop alpha? You can never make children sit and close their eyes. It's not going to be possible. But you take them outside, do grounding, you know, when they play in the mud, when they are around with nature, that is when the alpha automatically forms. We go out in a holiday, you know, and suddenly we feel calm and relaxed. That holiday, what is it doing to me? It's just giving me that nice alpha. So that is what, again, which we lost, you know, during the period of COVID.
If I come to you, like most of us will have this problem, but if I come to you, say, look, I'm very stressed. My business is not doing well. My relationship with my wife is not, kids are not. So there are so many things happening in any individual's life. Can you help me improve my mental health?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm enrolling onto your program. First question is, how long would it take?
So see, first of all, we have to understand that there is a commitment which is required. You know, a lot of people say, I'm stressed, and then they're happy about it because they love to talk about the problem. Yes, I know I can't sleep and I know I am stressed, but I don't want to do anything about it. It does take commitment because once you understand the brain, so I have a little formula which I call aware, care, and dare. The first thing is become aware. What is the real problem? Face it. Then you need to care about it because you need to really go through a proper process, anywhere from 3 months to 9 months, depending on, depending on.
And during that, can I still keep up with my therapist, for example?
Absolutely. It's a multi-speciality, it's a multidisciplinary thing, right? Once you understand what is going on, you really need to take steps in the right order. You cannot just say, no, I'll fix the sleep later, let me just fix this part first. It's a continuum, it's a process. Yes, precisely. And if I just look at the biceps and say, hey, the biceps develop, it never happens, right? It will not happen.
I wish it could. So how do you see technology influencing the future of brain health?
Oh, big time. You know, I don't know if you just got the news that there's something called Neo Brain or that they are building. So for example, you and me, there's like a second conversing and then...
It'll hold that and then it'll give you a summary of that at the end.
And then later on, it'll also say that what was Dr. RF thinking about you and what was going on.
And next time you meet me...
I would be prepared, you know.
Be prepared,
so that is, you know, so this is...
Have you bought one?
No.
That'll make your brain redundant, I think.
Oh, yes, and I don't want to do that.
It's like the sat-nav.
I don't want to do that. But what is really interesting is all the AI. I think before we were doing all the tasks manually. Now, I love studying all these parameters, right? I'm a huge fan of studying every little detail.
So it's like I'm a clinical advisor for a company called Ognito, I can say it here.
Yes.
And they do,
I saw one of your podcasts
yes,
with him.
So they do clinical documentation. That has made life so easy for us. So I'm just having a consultation. It just does the whole documentation better than I could. And then it comes up with a summary and a report. That's better than what I could do.
And that saves the burnout for the doctors, right?
Yes.
There's a data
I can
which
see more
says,
patients.
Yes.
I can see more patients.
And that is what the patient needs, right? You need connection, human connection. There's
and eye contact.
Yes, precisely.
This is what's needed.
And hand touch.
Yes,
I think
hand
both
touch.
of them, you know. So I've seen so many videos showing, oh, the doctor is typing.
He doesn't even know who's come and gone.
Look at the patient, right? So I think AI, in a way, is going to change a lot of our functions for good, you know. However, I don't get into the debate that doctors will be redundant. That's not going to be
when people
possible.
ask me that, I always tell them, see, AI will not take your job. It's the people who are trained in AI that will take your job. So be afraid of that, not the AI technology.
Precisely.
So
start
get yourself,
learning. Start learning. I spend 15 minutes every day learning one or other new AI. This, you know, I have like a dedicated thing because this is the future, right? You cannot be blinded to the future.
Can you give me some tips, or anybody, our audience, what kind of habits people can inculcate within their daily routine to help their brain function?
So when we did all these interviews, you know, and the lifestyle and something which I had to fix myself, so we devised a formula, and that formula sort of comes down from a lot of survey, also a lot of literature research. There's something called movers. Movers for every day. So M stands for meditation, O is for oxygenation, V is for visualization. A lot of people do not visualize how their day is going to be, how their week is going to be, month is going to be, and then, you know, sort of stress comes in. Visualization.
So first was
M, meditation.
Meditation, oxygenation.
O, oxygenation. V for visualization. E for exercise. Exercise is our routine, you know.
And
R for reading. Reading something affirmative, but real reading.
Paper reading.
Reading, which
is that an S?
And yes, S.
Sleep.
You want to guess? No.
Sleep.
Scribing what is not serving you, you know. Scribing, which we call as catharsis. Scribing out all the negative emotions, anything which is not serving, not typing. Writing and then, you know, burning it out. You don't vomit and then look, oh, what is the inside the vomit? You just let it out. So this simply 5 minutes spending in each of it sort of, you know, changes the brain's structure. Why scribing? Because it will get the limbic system calm down. Why do you need to exercise? Because it will have all the serotonin and all
That's why people, you know, write their blogs and they write. It helps them kind of bring out their emotions.
Absolutely, because that firing, see, limbic system is ought to fire. You know, we were all hunter-gatherers, and there used to be the threat. So the lions and tigers of the past is actually the emails and the WhatsApps of today, right? So suddenly, you know,
and
WhatsApp and the Twitters of today, and then suddenly the Trump, the Trump card comes in. So that is where your limbic system is constantly fired. So it's always in that mode of protection, you know. I want to be.
I was speaking to someone recently. They said, look, our sympathetic system works on, as you said, the 4 Fs.
Correct.
And as we evolved and modernization, urbanization, the 2 Fs we don't get hit by very often, which is fear and fright, for example. So if you are in a jungle, living in a jungle, which you're supposed to, you have danger everywhere, from insects to animals to rain to temperature, everything.
Correct.
And you're always having this fear and fright. So you're charged up, you're in a sympathetic system. Now, you don't have those direct fears and frights.
Correct.
Yes, you might get a stress because of your work or your child or whatever, but those huge threats and that's why you get redundant in that area.
But let me talk to you about fear, since we are on this part of the fear. This is a real life example to my own parents, okay? My parents were in India a few weeks back. They live with me here in Dubai. They got digitally arrested, which is this stupid scam which is going on.
Digitally arrested?
Digital arrest scam which is going on, you know, and they lost about 200K AD, you know. And then I wonder, I said, what was going on? Why didn't you call me? I mean, we are so close. We are only a 3-team member in the family. They said, no, we were so fearful. So this fear sort of a thing really has...
Digital fear now.
There's cyber crime, cyber security, there's cyber bullying.
The elephants and the lions and tigers now.
The new age lions and tigers, you know?
Yeah, and God, there's a lot to talk.
Oh, yes.
We are done, I think, because we don't have much time left. So maybe we'll have a part 2 of this. There's so much more to talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Sweta. I think it was a fabulous session. A lot of information and bits will come out of this. And we will probably call you again for a second part, maybe with a different, kind of complete different aspect to the whole thing.
Thank you very much.
Talking about brains. Thank you.
Thank you.